God morgen and happy Freyja's Day to you. I hope that you are absolutely, like myself, ready for the weekend. We celebrate just a real return of our energy for healing, for growth, for learning, for loving. Before we get started today, I'm talking about Freyja and her part that she really brought to our understanding. I want to take a minute. Firstly, point out New Reality TV, a wonderful collection, just a plethora of perspectives that may help you to find that piece of intellect that you need to obtain or maintain your mental health. I also want to say thank you, thank you to all of those who have liked, followed, and subscribed in any of the platforms that we're available on. Please, if you have even further and attract those people who really need to hear this message. Finally, before we get started, I want to ask if you have any of those spare coins hanging around. Feel free to hit up the tip jar. You can hit up our tip jar either through this interface or obviously our website at norsewhispers.com. And for those of you who want to just need someone else who can listen and maybe provide you with some buoys to get yourself through this thing we call life, hit up norsewhispers.com/coaching. I'm happy to spend some time and just have a conversation. Hopefully we can find something that works. Now, today, as always, we've got over there, for me anyway, it's over there. We've got the live feed open for you've got any questions, by all means, throw them up in the chat, and we'll find some answers. All right, so be sure to feel comfortable hitting up the chat. Today we're talking about Freyja. Now, many people look at Freyja, the goddess, as this goddess of love and war. And while she was all of that, what Freyja also did throughout many of the sagas we read, where she had an understanding, almost from birth, of magic. And she brought magic ultimately to Midgard, and she would also go on to teach Othin magic, at which he would then become, included in this group of individuals that the Norse would refer to as the Seether magicians. A very powerful and very important part of energy management. When we consider this idea that the world, the experience that we have called reality, is energy. And what I mean by that is that, no, we're not in the Matrix, but when our physical sensory input, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, and our fingers, and all of our skin, accept the reality that's occurring, those experiences that are occurring, it converts it to a bioenergy, bioelectricity, and it transmits it from the import location, wherever that is, to the brain as energy. It's transmitted across our nerves using a bioelectricity. Okay, and that's for all of our sensory input. It all comes in to our brain as energy. Now, that energy, as it enters our whatever port, whatever sensory input, and it's converted to energy, and it's beginning its transmission to our brain, it's passed through this thing that we call an emotional filter. Now, the emotional filter is typically set by our internal chemistry. So if we're feeling blue, our chemistry, i.e. the pH balance and the hormones within the bloodstream and all of the cerebral spinal fluid, all of that is adjusted to meet is surrounding all of our sensory inputs. So as those sensory inputs passes this bioelectricity over the nervous system to our brain, it's actually being um, manipulated, modified just a little bit to meet this chemical composition, right? And then by the time the brain reads it, what it's done is it's already sent a signal to our heart. Our heart then releases more hormones into our system to adjust and actually bring the brain and the cerebral spine fluid, all of these, um, all of these fluids, to a certain chemical composition, which then the brain has a register of and says happy. That means glad. That means relieved. Whatever, right? And then this memory, this collection of energy particles that our sensory input has created, is then stored in memory with this emotional signature, with this emotional memory of what the chemical composition was. Now, this chemical composition that's stored in memory is then recalled in a late and down the road. We're in a very different place in our life now, and we look back on those fond memories of childhood, and while we look back at them, they may seem different than what they did when we were experiencing it. An example, my teenage sons are currently in high school. There's a lot of drama that happens during our high school years. This drama is can be quite emotional for boys and girls. It matters not. And this emotional data is stored in memory, and this is so important in our lives, so central, so it seems so important at the moment. However, my older sons now are in their almost 30, and they look back at high school with very different perspectives now. Why? Well, the energy of that emotion of back in the day was stored in memory. But now, as we recall the memory, and the memory comes back forwards to bring us the imagery, we're processing that imagery through different emotional chemical compositions. So, in other words, we're looking at it very differently than we did when we were experiencing it. Now, this happens moment by moment by moment. You're a wonderful processing machine in that you are each present that you are conscious, and you're absorbing energy, you're absorbing the experiences. They're being stored constantly. Now, again, as I mentioned, we can take some time, and now we look back at the energy that was stored in the past, and we go, wow, I remember those days. And now I look back on it, and I may say, oh, I remember it so fondly, because now my life may be more complex, or more complicated. So I look back at those days and go, wow, man, I remember those days of irresponsibility and freedom from rent and all the adulty stuff. And we look back and maybe with a fondness of an energy that at the time may have seemed almost overwhelming. This happens because our perspective is changing, our emotional filters are changing, thereby creating a different chemistry, thereby storing the memory now with different perspectives, with a different view. So, what Freyja does is she brings this understanding about energy. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with magic, magic is simply a matter of manipulating energy. Now, in my ancestral belief, there were two forms of magic, two main forms of magic. The first being seether magic, which is probably what you're going to read about most often in all of the texts. Any sagas and all of that stuff is all going to talk about seether magicians. And they were typically vulvas, or there was a whole subset of them. And what they did is they relied on the energy of other entities, spirits, the gods, all of these other sources. They would simply incant their spells or their blessings or whatever. That energy would come out of them. And then the spiritual entities around them, the spiritual entities in the nearby vicinity, would then elevate that energy to bring it to fruition, whatever it was. I'm always, I always use an example of walking down a path, and during the path, it's a long road, and we're walking, and we say, I wish I could make this walk easier. Well, when I incant that spell into the universe in a Seether magician form would then go out and it would search. It would find in the analogy I use, it finds a nearby farmer. And some of the Lanveti, spirits of the land, then begin to whisper into the farmer's ear to allow his horse to have some time to run in the pasture adjacent to the path that we're walking. Oh, wow, man, that would, go have fun. Let the horse run and get some exercise and this, that, and the other thing. Meanwhile, there are other Lanveti who are communicating with the horse that says, hey, if when the farmer lets you into the pasture to run, go all the way across the yard there, and on the far fence, you'll find a stranger and they'll be walking. Let's give them a ride from one end of the property to the other. So these energies are helping to energize the manifestation of this thing to fruition. Eventually the horse shows up, you get a ride from one end of the property, you've saved yourself a couple miles, and you've given the horse their exercise. It's a win-win for everyone, right? That's a Seether magician. Now, Spackraft, which was the other form of magic to the Norse, Spackraft actually calls upon the energy of the magician. We are able to focus the energy and manifest things ourselves. So it would be very akin as I need a bottle in my hand and poof, the bottle appears, right? So Spackraft requires a very focused energy stream to manifest on the physical plane. But that's Spackraft. Now, I said two main ones because you also have, obviously, Galdr magic. And Galdr magic, of course, being when two or more come together with a singular focus. Now we're generating a larger energy stream with additional magicians. So now Galdr magic also included sounds and song that were pleasant to the ear. So we could do drumming or singing that was pleasant to the ear to generate energy towards a common goal. So that was Galdr magic. Very powerful uses of energy. Now, when we talk about Spackraft and we're talking about generating energy at which to generate or manifest things on the physical plane, back up to the previous conversation, and this is the use of this bioelectricity in your body that you are creating. Now, there's a couple of different energy sources that you can use. One, we know, is physical, and that's where we actually work out. We're energizing. We're just pushing energy all through the body. Long walks, running. Some people get it from bicycling. Some people get it from weightlifting. Whatever it is, that your physical entity can create this manifestation energy. talk about manifestation energy in just a minute. But another way is obviously emotional energy. Emotion has a very powerful energy to it. It can be very, very useful in manifesting a different path or a different thing to help us along the way. So, emotions are very, very critical to our existence in its entirety. Very important energy. Now, the final energy source I want to talk about that you have within you is, of course, your spiritual self. Your spiritual self, and I always tap my head when I say spiritual self. Many people say, well, why don't you tap your heart? Well, you could. I always look at the brain as three parts, okay? So I look at the front part as my physical brain, which interprets this sensory input and does all the physical living stuff, the stuff I need to do every day, right? I'm learning how to ride a bicycle, or I'm learning how to drive a car, or I'm learning how to do whatever. All of that's done in my physical brain. Behind the physical brain, of course, is our memory bank, right? All of those memories that we use almost every day, whether we know it or not. So all of our memories, all those things that we've learned, all those tasks, all those skills, and certainly all the experiences that we've had, all are going to be stored in that memory bank, if you will. Now, the third part of the brain, which I, again, always tap in the back, is our spiritual self. Our spiritual self is connected to the spiritual realm all the time. It never lets go. So we have this little plate that sits on top of our head like this, and that little plate makes contact with our physical brain and our memories when we're conscious, and this is called our consciousness. Our consciousness then connects those two, that allows them to interact with each other. So we can be walking down the street and we see something that reminds us of a memory, and we draw up that memory, we bring in the imagery into our third eye, and we're recalling this past, right? But when we fall asleep and our consciousness slips back, and now it's making contact between our spiritual self and our memories, right? And now we're connecting our experiences, our interpreted experiences, through our spiritual brain into the spiritual realm. This goes towards our deities or towards the other spirits who want to see a different perspective, because we're offering a different way to look at these individual situations. So our experiences, we experience something, and our emotional, remember, our emotional filters are going to chew that up a little bit, change it a little bit, manipulate it. So by the time it gets to my memories, it's a little different than what it was maybe in reality. That difference is what the spiritual self is looking for. How are you looking at things differently? Because if we have 5 people who all witness exactly the same thing, they're going to see it 5 different ways. They're going to see it that way because, firstly and foremost, we're all at a different point in our trajectory at manipulating our own DNA. But then, and that manipulation then alters the chemistry that we're creating. Remember, we're releasing chemistry into our body that's then registered by the brain as a particular emotion. So that process is different for each person along our path. So if, me as an example, and say my younger sons who are teenagers, and look at a particular experience, we're going to see it very differently. However, the beautiful thing about us seeing it differently is the deities who are connected through our spiritual self to us get to see more perspectives. They get to see the teenage boy's perspective. They get to see the old man's perspective together into this singular experience. it allows them to have a much fuller picture. Remember, we always talk about this puddle, and where we're all standing around the puddle, and we're looking at the puddle, we're seeing it differently. Yet the puddle's not changing. We're just experiencing the puddle very differently. And the height of our enlightenment is when we can turn to the people on the left and to the right of us and ask them what their perspective of the puddle is. As they explain they're giving us even more of a perspective of the puddle. So we're getting to see the puddle in more of its entirety. So we're not just looking at the world, looking at an experience, i.e. this puddle, like this. We're able to just open up our view and see it from a much different perspective. This is the same thing that the gods are doing with your life's experience, my life's experience, and every other living thing on the planet, in the universe for that matter, right? So it's a very important and very powerful skill you have. Now, here's the kicker before we move on, is that you control this process. When we receive any type of input into our physical sensory input, we have a choice. We can decide how we're going to view this event, this experience. We can look at this experience from a negative, a doubtful, skeptic, very not desirable state, or we can choose to look at what it is of this experience that's beneficial to us. What am I learning? How am I growing? How will this help me? All of these questions, if we look at each experience from that perspective, see how the world changes? And the world is a very beautiful place. This thing we call life is a most beautiful experience. Or you can choose to make it an ugly one. We each have a choice. And what's really important is we each have a choice every present. Between each experience that we have a choice. And we can choose happiness. We can choose to see that side of life. Every experience that we will encounter throughout our lifetimes has both the ugliness and the beauty. Right? And we get to choose which way we look. We can look for the beautiful things or not. Okay? And that choice is up to us. Each minute, each present, we can change. If we've been looking at things very negatively in the past, maybe just things are just stacking up against us, we just feel overwhelmed, we feel that the world's kind of plotting against us, we can change that because we control this. We can change that and say, you know what? No, I'm just not going to subscribe to that. I want to be happy. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy this experience called life. We can make that choice. And as we spoke about yesterday, this is really where the power of Thor comes in handy, is that once we set our mind to that, and we say, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I want to feel, we focus our energy on it. That's the way we're going to see the world. We can change that view, each and every one of us. Now, the good news, even better news, I should say, about us changing our perspective and us deciding we're going to go this way of happiness, this way of joy, this way of harmony and peace. The good news with this is that it's infectious. When you are in that mode and you are enjoying your life and you're seeing all the beautiful things in this world, your energy is then emitted outside of you through your aura to all of those around you. This means you, by virtue of being happy and joyful and just full of life and love, are passing that energy to other people. You don't even have to notice them, right? You don't even have to. We may not even see this person whom we've passed this positive energy to and altered their trajectory. In the same way, if we are standing in line at the coffee shop and we are getting ready to get our coffee, and it's already been a kind of trying morning, and the person in front of us is absolutely bubbly. They are the most beautiful soul at that moment. How does it make you feel? Right? Doesn't it just perk you up just a little bit? Or if you see one of my most precious moments is seeing young families, and you're standing in line, and the woman is standing there in front of me, and she kind of looks tired, but she's cheerful. She has a baby in her arms. She has a toddler at her legs, and she's still pleasant, and she's wonderful. I'm often a sucker and typically buy her coffee because I know, right? It's infectious. It's when you become happy, you become harmonious and peaceful and loving. That energy is then transmitted to all of those around you. You become the beacon for those people whom may not be able to yet see this positivity in this light. You become their light. So remember, when you're out seeing the world, remember, my grandfather used to say, whenever you're out seeing the world, just remember the world is seeing you. So remember, energy, it's all about energy, and you have the choice to go whichever direction you want to go. You can see the world for the ugliness and the bitter and the division and the hate, or you can choose to see the world differently. This is the magic that Freyja brings to us in an understanding of managing this existence energy. It has gone on in your week. Remember, you have a choice. You can see it positively. Look for the positive. It's there, I promise you. Begin to focus your mind on seeing the positive. All right? And it'll happen. My friends, I wish you the very best weekend. I wish you the very best Freyja's Day as we celebrate this energy of all of existence, bringing it in and enjoying, embracing it for what it is. All right? And we will see you again on, actually, no, I guess tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow is the drum circle, so be sure to join us for that. And we will see you again on Mani's Day after that. Enjoy your weekend. Bring back that energy. Heal yourself. Remember, you're a light for someone else. Be that light. Happy Freyja's Day. We will see you again tomorrow. Love and light, my friends. Don't do that. Yeah.